Sometimes inspiration can come from some pretty silly ideas. For instance, I love the sound of a hammered dulcimer. I don't have a hammered dulcimer. However, I have a regular mountain dulcimer, and I've also got a hammer. Now, I don't want to totally break the thing by any means. I actually want to keep it because I like it. So here's the tuning of it. And with the hammer, and the whole point of this, even though it's a silly idea, it's going to offer you something different, and you might stumble upon something that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And as silly as it is, maybe this hammer, maybe if I use the spiked edges and I try to just pick it, that's something new and fun. Sticking with the dulcimer theme, my song Consider This uses a hammered dulcimer using forks in the intro of the song, and this is how it's done. What's up, TikTokers? Today my quick tip to you is about alternate tunings, and it's one of my favorite ways to get inspired when I pick up a guitar. Basically, as opposed to having my standard tuned guitar, I've tuned this way down and it's a giant open tuning. So I have it tuned to A, E, and B. So you get a giant open A sus2. And now I can play things I could never play in standard tuning, like this. Beautiful. So I would implore you to detune your guitar. You never know what you're going to come up with, and it's so fun. What's up, TikTok? Today we're making kick drums and Native Instruments Absinthe. First, we start with the sine wave. And now we add an envelope to the main pitch of that oscillator. And all the magic, it all comes from the curvature of our envelope. We don't want that. Better. But it's really good right around here. Next, we add some distortion with a sine wave shaper. Next, I'm adding Absinthe Super Comb filter to give it some grit. Next, there's more wave shaping, this time with a different wave shape. Now I add a filter to tame in all the distortion. There's an envelope on the filter frequency, because without it, it sounds like this. Now put together in a little beat, it sounds like this. What's up, TikTok? Today we're making kick drums on the Modular. First, we start with a sine wave out of the Make Noise DPO. Now we add a pitch envelope from the Make Noise Maths. We can adjust the amplitude envelope from the other channel of Maths. So we can be really short or long. Then we crunch it through a 1073. Nice and fat. Now we record it into Pro Tools. Let's trim it. Add a fade. EQ it. Give it some multi-band compression. Slam it through the newfangled Audio Elevate. Use it. What's up, TikTok? Today my quick tip to you is to put effects pedals in front of synths. It's super fun. We'll be putting the Juno 106 through the Eventide H9. Before, it's super inspirational. You can do it with plugins. You don't need outboard gear, but it's definitely a lot more fun if you can get your hands on something physical. Yo, TikTok, we're gonna record some shakers today. We got this one, and we got this one, both from a children's toy set. Here they are recorded in Pro Tools. This one is the green one. As you can see, they've been double tracked, panned left and right to make them super wide. And then here is the red one. Layered together, they sound like this. That to me sounds better than any shaker sample ever. Doesn't matter, always do it yourself. It's way more fun. Finger snaps are some of my favorite kind of percussion, so let's make some. I've stacked our snaps together. I've panned the individual channels, either hard left or hard right, and I've made variations just by moving the hits around, nothing else. Take out the low end, because we don't need it. Slam the living daylights out of them with Elevate. Once they're rendered down, let's put them in a beat. So I implore you to make your own finger snaps. It's fun, it's really easy, and it sounds great. See ya. What's up, TikTok? Let's talk about glitch edits doing it the hard way. This is from a track of mine called Lying to Myself. As you can see, it is all done on the grid by hand. There are no glitch plugins. The trick is just to painstakingly do it one by one. You just make a lot of weird sounds. I made a lot of this on a modular synth. Then you just painstakingly arrange it. And once you spend 20 hours of your life on one section, you get something like this. So I'm currently working on this remix where I need to add a melodic element, and I figured I would use this Glock to make both a melody and then an ambient pad behind it. Next, we're going to take the Glock through the Maris Polymoon, which is basically a big, crazy multi-tap delay. Next, we're going to space it out a bit by using the Eventide, well, space. Now I've taken the recording of the Glock through the effects pedals, and I've put it into a pretty simple granular patch and reactor. Now I'm going to record myself moving the start point of the grain, so therefore we get a more evocative and gestural sound. Here's what it all sounds like together. So I'm back to working on this remix, and I want to add a warpy Reese bass out of the modular synth. This is how we do it. Start with a sawtooth wave. Now we're going to add the second oscillator and detune it. Let's send it to a filter. However, for our purposes here, a notch filter is going to be more interesting to me than a low pass, so let's switch that. So that's the basis of our sound now, but we're going to mess it up a whole lot more. Let's add an LFO to our notch filter. Now we're going to put it through the Noise Engineering Pure Ruina, which is a multi-stage distortion. Pedal time. We're going to use the Dwarfcraft Reese Lightning, and I was fortunate enough to lend them this name for this exact reason. So I've recorded that Reese directly into Pro Tools. Let's do some editing in there, and then we're going to put it in Kontakt so we can actually use it musically. Let's add some EQ. More EQ with the Slate API. Let's just make it a little bit hotter with the newfangled Audio Saturate. Here it is, now in Kontakt. Within Kontakt, there are a couple things we're going to do. We're going to go in Script Editor. We're going to go to Preset, Factory, Performance, and do Unisono Portamento. Set the mono mode to legato. Set portamento to auto. Make time a little bit shorter. I like it around 40. Now we can play it. Still, there's more work to be done. Since there's a long file with a lot of modulation, we're going to move the start point of where we're hitting the sample so it doesn't just start here. I found I like it the most here. I made a duplicate of that same instrument so I can have another that starts at a different start point. Lastly, I'm going to add some unison to really make this nice and wide and even more detuney. And now I've done some simple arranging, and here's what it all sounds like with the rest of the track. If you want a copy of the raw resound, there's a link to it on my Instagram. It's just Matt Lange Audio. Have fun with it. One of my favorite tricks to do, and this is something I do all the time for transitions, is to use reverse guitar melodies, and here's how I do it. First, I'm going to play the melody that's later going to get reversed in Pro Tools. Sometimes I hear the melody in my head that's reversed, and I actually have to learn it backwards because I can't just play it normally and then reverse the individual notes because I want to reverse the transitions between notes. That's really what gives it its charm. So in order to do that, I actually have to learn it backwards and then reverse it so it actually plays forward, but backwards, but forwards, but backwards. Reversing things is a little bit different in Everyday W, but in Pro Tools, we do it with a function in Audio Suite called reverse. Now when we hit render, reverse the file. Listening back, I decided I only wanted to use this section. I gave it some reverb from the Eventide Black Hole and some delay from Valhalla Delay, and now it sounds like this. Put into context, we have this. It's a really fun way to take a really traditional sounding instrument like a guitar and kind of flip it so it's a little bit more ethereal, a little bit more alien, but still retains the qualities of an acoustic instrument. I love it. It's a really fun trick. Try it with every instrument, not just guitar, but particularly things that actually have an attack on it, like a guitar or a piano. Those are the ones that it's really going to be really effective with. Let's talk vocal production and mixing. We're going to use my recent track, This Is All We Have, to show how I do it. This is my vocal mic. It is a Neumann TLM 103. I've used this for almost every vocal I've done on both myself and other people for the past decade. This is my preamp, and it is a Heritage Audio 73 Junior. Basically, it is a handmade clone of a Neve 1073 from the 70s, but made in Spain. They sound absolutely phenomenal. Last thing in the chain is my Avid Omni. This is my converter. And this is what takes the analog signal from the microphone and the preamp, converts it to digital, and pipes it into Pro Tools. I record vocals into a different session. So what you see up top here, this is the track that I'm recording against. It's basically a bounce of my instrumental. What you see here, these are the composite takes. This means I basically recorded a bunch of different takes and then selected the best sentence, best word at a time, and basically hacked them all together into one take. And here you can see all the takes that I recorded throughout the song. I am hardly a perfect singer, so I record a lot so I can choose the very best. And if we look here, you can see the actual comp of the bridge. So right here, these are my actual comp takes. But here are all the individual ones, and you can see where basically this guy went up here, this guy went up there, and ultimately my lead is the one right here. And I've created 3 stacks, and they are all actually just built out of all the takes, but now they are going to be panned hard left and right, so it's really nice and wide. A big part of my vocal production technique is not only just tuning, but also time correction, and here's how I go about both of those things. For tuning, I use Antara's Auto Tunes graphic mode. I don't use the auto mode because I want more control. As you can see, so the red line is the original take, the green line is the corrected take. I don't want it to sound super tuned, I just want it to sound cleaner. So as you can see, they are not terribly far from each other, and also my retune speed is relatively slow. I just want it to sound natural. For time correction, I'm using Pro Tools Elastic Audio. It allows me to stretch, basically compress, or expand my takes. But I'm not making it perfect, I'm just making it tighter. More important than the timing of the lead though is the timing of the doubles, and for that we're gonna use this amazing tool called VocalLine. First I load the lead into VocalLine. Now I load a double. Now I'm gonna hit spot and watch the timing of the double conform to the lead. Here we are back in the original session of This Is All We Have. These are our stacked vocals in the bridge without any compression or EQ. And when you touch down to lowly earth again, please remember me. Now on every vocal track, I've got just a simple high pass filter from this DMG Audio Equilibrium. And then I'm doing a high boost at, 15K with the Slate FGA. It's an API 550 clone. Sounds amazing. I'm also doing a slight little dip at 200. And then my compression is Slate's version of a distressor, the FG Stress. I'm using the compressor in 10:1 opto mode, and I'm giving it a fair amount of compression. Touchdown to lowly The multi-band compressor is the secret weapon because it responds dynamically to the vocal. Vocal de-essing is something I'm really particular about as well, and this is how I do it. I'm using the Aosis E2 de-esser, and this is kind of only the first step of the process, but here you can see it working. If I gave you your space. Now I've gone in and I've drawn volume automation on syllables that poke out too much even with the de-esser. Doing this kind of stuff, it's really tedious. It takes a lot of time, but I promise you, it sounds so much better in the end. Lastly, we're going to talk about reverbs and delays, and I love reverbs and delays. In the last section of this song, there are about 4 different reverbs and delays getting used, and they are: our main delay is the Soundtoys Echo Boy, just a regular quarter note tape delay, but it goes through a compressor, and the compressor is being sidechained by the lead vocal itself. So it kind of ducks the delays down a bit when the vocal's in, and then releases them, and you hear all the delays as the vocal lets go. Keep it all together when it's so austere. Great trick. There are 2 reverbs, an Eventide Black Hole for the mega space, and then a 2C audio basically doing a lexicon kind of thing. We have another send that happens occasionally. This time it's a half note echo boy, but goes through an Eventide micro pitch to spread it really far left and right. Because this is all we have. I really love big, washed out, analog, 80s sounding ambient pads. And we're gonna make some today. We're gonna do it entirely in the box, not using the gear. And this way everyone can do it. I'm going to use the Brainworks Oberheim just because it's a very classic sounding analog style soft synth, but you can use absolutely anything that is kind of a classic analog modeled synth to do this. I have both oscillators set to be sawtooths, and I'm gonna detune the second one by, let's say, 20 cents. Perfect. Let's engage the filter. Give it some modulation from the second envelope. Now we're going to give it some attack and release on the amplitude envelope. With some bigger chords, it sounds like this. Now the synth is only half the fun. We got to get into the effects. That's really where so much of the character of the sound comes from. First up is chorus. I'm going to use the Eventide Tricera chorus because it does the 80s chorus thing really well. So here's our chord dry. Here's it with the chorus. Now we need reverb, and what better to use for this than the Eventide Black Hole, once again, because all the effects Eventide makes are basically God. So this is a pad sound I'm happy with. If we make it 100% wet, then we get a super washed out pad, and I love this sound. Now that we've done our basic big 80s analog ambient pad, let's be a little more experimental. Let's take this into Blade Runner territory. This time around, we're going to use the Eventide Shimmer Verb because it is pitch shifters within a reverb. And I've set both pitch shifters to pitch shift by 30 cents down. And it's going to happen every 66 milliseconds. The pitch shifting delay is going to re-trigger. It almost sounds like a Doppler effect. If we do this with a melody, the natural chorusing of the pitch shifting is really nice. So let's be a little bit prettier, a little bit more lush. We're going to take one of the pitch shifters in the reverb, put it up an octave, and the other we're going to put up an octave and a fifth. It sounds like this. So I just made a quick little arrangement of these 2 patches together. One has that minus 30 cent pitch shifting, and the other has the octave. Even though these types of sounds are near 40 years old, I still get so inspired by them. I love it. So it's really easy to do and it's really inspirational. So go have fun, go try it. Today we're going to talk about the style of drums I created for the Isolated project. A big part of this project was having a sonic identity, a style, an aesthetic, if you will, and I wanted to create a style of drums that would actually be used throughout the entire album. It starts with a drum kit from Get Good Drums. In this example, I'm going to use their new kit, the One Kit Wonder. I created a very simple MIDI pattern, and note how sparse it is. This is on purpose because of what happens after. Also note the velocities. They are also pretty dynamic as well, and that is because of the processing that'll happen after. The next part of the isolated drum sound, guitar pedals. First, we're gonna go through an overdrive, and I'm gonna use the Chase Bliss Brothers for this. Now we're gonna go through various forms of delay. First, I'm gonna use the Eventide Rose. Now I'm gonna do it again, this time using the band delay in the time factor. Now we're gonna do it again with a different setting, this time filter pong. Now I'm gonna do one more pass of absolute brutal distortion from the big distortion sound machine. So now I have the pedal drums all recorded into Pro Tools. Now I have to cut it up. I don't want all of these playing all at once. It'll be sheer noise. So I'm just gonna pick and choose little bits from each one. Now here's a little comp I just made. So all the grayed out bits, those were the original takes, and the blue ones are the ones that have now been rearranged and cut up. Now I've gone and I've added two things. First, there is a synthetic kick, just something I made on the Modular, and then there is a kick and the snare from the original Get Good drum sound. Alone, they sound like this. It's just a layer. Here's all the drums put together now with a little bass and a little bit of a pad. There's one final element that's really crucial to the sound of the drums when isolated, and that is resampling or pitch shifting. This is a small part of the really heavy distortion, and you can hear it's actually tonal. And what's especially cool about that is if you listen closely, it's actually an A flat, and this track's in C minor, so it's already in key. It's our flat 6. Now I'm gonna drop this down an octave, essentially cutting the sample rate in half. Now I'm gonna do it again, taking our octave down, and this time pitch shifting that up 4 semitones, which is gonna take our A flat up to a C. And here's how it gets used. That's entirely the sonic aesthetic of the drums and isolated. It's a ton of fun. So to close out, I love transitional effects, and I'm always looking for ways to create new ones. So a really easy way and a really fun and expressive way, you get a cello bow and you get a cymbal. So I'm just gonna record a few different takes and maybe just do 3 of them. Each one's gonna be a little bit different just by the sheer nature of doing this. This is sloppy, this is experimental. We're not trying to be precise. So now that we've got our bowed cymbal recorded, let's figure out how to use it. These 4 recordings right here are our cymbals. So I'm just gonna go through each one really quickly. Here's number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Literally the simplest thing we could do is just use one as a straight transition. So let's take this one right here because it's got a lot of high end and there isn't a lot of tonality. We can be a lot more interesting. Let's try reversing it. So let's take one of the more lower tonal recordings and let's manipulate that. Let's use this one. If you pitch it down an octave, it really turns into something huge. Now I'm going to give it a bunch of distortion from Isotope Trash. The end of that is really cool and really gnarly. Rendered down and layered with the other, it sounds like this. In context with everything else. Last thing we're gonna do, we're gonna take one of the other cymbal recordings and we're gonna turn that into a melodic instrument that we can actually play. So I've loaded our cymbal into Kontakt, now I can play it. I'm gonna change the sampling function to tone machine, which is gonna change it into basically a resynthesis algorithm. Now I can play chords with it. And that's all from our cymbal. I've gone and I've added a filter. There is an envelope on the filter with a slow attack. And I've also sped up the sound so it goes through that whole transition a little bit quicker. Now with adding a reverb and a chorus, we can play some really lush chords that sound like this. About this series of how I do what I do, I'm going to show you one of my favorite tricks, which is creating ambient pads out of guitar. There are a few steps to this. First, we're going to record some big open chords through some guitar pedals. Then we're going to time stretch it to hell and back, and then we're going to throw it into a sampler to be able to play it. This is the guitar I'm going to use for it. It's a PRS CE24 semi-hollow. The effects we're going to use: a Maris Polymoon, an Earthquaker C machine for some chorus, an Eventide Black Hole to really space it out, and a volume pedal. So I tracked those into Pro Tools, and we're going to put them into a free little tool called Pulse Stretch. Here's our recording. In Pulse Stretch, I'm going to stretch each chord by about 13.36%. So here's what the first chord sounds like. Second chord. Third. And the last one, just that note I tapped. So now I'm gonna go and I'm gonna render them all out. So I've gone and I've mapped all of our chords into our sampler, which is Kontakt. As you can see, I've mapped it so the starting note extends down a whole octave for each one, and that's because I really like the sound of any sound getting resampled down an octave. I've set an envelope with a very long release of 3.7 seconds, and the attack doesn't need to be as slow because just the nature of the sound, it swells already. Now I can play it. The beauty of these being time stretched and pulse stretch, I can hold it for pretty much forever. So just for fun, I made a bit of an IDM beat and then I threw our ambient guitar pads behind it as the backdrop. Here's what it sounds like. That wraps up my series of music production tips. So I hope you got some inspiration, some ideas, and I'll see you guys soon.